Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. Bill Landis, do you know where I was born?
Do I know where you were born?
Do you know where I was born?
I don't know where you were. Were you born in Las Vegas,
I was
Nevada?
born in Las Vegas, Nevada.
How did I not know that?
In the year of our Lord, 1973.
Can I be, because I think technically we're in Paradise.
We are in Paradise.
Paradise, Nevada.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was born on Nellis Air Force Base.
Okay.
Nobody cares. Tony,
that's actually fascinating.
Yeah,
Fun
yeah,
fact.
yeah. That's why I'm bad at gambling.
You feel like more in tune with yourself when you're back here?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I still lose money, but I do feel in tune with myself. We're bringing this to you on Tuesday night because we're reacting to what happened Tuesday at Big Ten Media Days. We're going to talk ball on our Wednesday noon show. 6 Big Ten teams spoke at the podiums and interviews. We're here on Radio Row. Ohio State, Nebraska, Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers, and Indiana. So we're going to talk ball with them at noon on Wednesday here on Kings of the North. But we want to react. And we're going to try to bring you these shorter reaction shows in the evening while we're here. So mostly to what Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said. We're also going to talk to Nicole Auerbach of NBC Sports about that a little bit later in this reaction show. Bill, I just want to tell you that I double-checked it at the 3:30 mark of Tony Petitti's address, half an hour address. At the 3:30 mark, he said the phrase, "Now let's focus on football." And I almost stood up and went, woo! Because we like it when at football media days, the Big Ten commissioner talks about football.
Did he talk about libraries to open up his spiel like he did last year, or something to that effect? I don't know if it was exactly libraries or not.
Focus on education. Nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to be found. We love that. This is not education media days. This is football media days.
So I was enthused by that, and then he actually went through, and I was sort of comparing it to what he said last year at Big Ten Media Days, and he didn't do it to the same degree. He went through and talked about all the teams Ohio State beat on the way to winning the national championship. To quote Tony Petitti, Ohio State defeated the 9th, 7th, 5th, and top-seeded teams in the 12-team bracket, giving the Big Ten back-to-back titles, which, again, baby steps, but I was not 1,000% sure that the Big Ten commissioner at his own media days would mention the fact that the Big Ten has won the last 2 national titles.
Yeah, well, certainly last year in Indianapolis, it didn't feel like you were at the media day for the conference that had just won the national championship.
Right.
And this year, I think, felt a little bit more like that. The trophy was up there with him, which I don't think was the case last year. So it was just kind of sitting there, honestly, doing a lot of the talking for itself. That's great. But then Tony Petitti himself, needs to come out and remind the world, like, hey, the national championship resides in the Big Ten because we've won it the last 2 years.
We're good at this.
Yeah.
We're good at ball. The Big Ten played, I'm quoting Petitti again, the Big Ten played in 8 of the 11 college football playoff games last season, which I didn't even realize. That's a good
way to spin it. Yeah, I like that.
8 of 11.
Yeah, that's good.
So the ones that they weren't in were Clemson, Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame,
Arizona State, Texas.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Tony.
It's not bad.
You got us, Tony. That's a good stat.
It's a little bit of what we're asking for.
We had both teams in the Rose Bowl quarterfinal game. So that's the Ohio State-Oregon game. So, I maybe would want him like at the end of Old School when Will Ferrell kicks the shopping cart. I want some of that Tony Petitti. Like if he came on the stage and kicked something, I'd be here for it. And he didn't take the bait, including by me, on some of the things about like, hey, why don't you tell the SEC to cram it? But I still think, did he like make the case for the Big Ten in what the Big Ten is and what the Big Ten wants?
Better than last year for sure. And I think mostly, I don't. He has a sense of decorum about him that maybe he will never do it exactly the way we've asked of him, and I suppose that is okay. But I thought it was better this time around, right? You wanted to come to Big Ten Media Days and feel like a presence from the conference that it knows it's good and it's not afraid to tell you that it's good. And I think we mostly got that.
Yeah, I think we mostly did. And he said he's going to come on with us in the fall.
We'll see. We're in the same room right now. It wouldn't be that hard.
You're in charge of tackling commissioners on this show.
Okay.
So I
You have to
asked.
use your local connections to bail me out of jail if that happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey guys, I was born in Vegas. Let my boy Philly Billy out of jail. So I guess so this has kind of been the moment, right? I mean, we made a big deal a couple months when a couple months ago when the SEC had their meetings in Destin, Florida, and made news for a week, and then they had their media days whenever it was 10 days ago, and it was like the Big Ten was sort of waiting for this, right? And of course, like Tony Petitti went on the Joel Klatt show, and we did an interview with Ross Dellinger that was published today. Like he's out there making the point, and we're going to talk about some of these things with Nicole, but we've discussed this before, but he just did his thing. And again, doesn't matter. Like the presentation, Tony Petitti is speaking to the college football world. Do his words have meaning? Do they have gravitas? Do they affect football?
I think so. It's actually kind of funny because when we'll talk about this playoff stuff, but like he's arguing on behalf of a playoff system that sort of removes the subjectivity and I guess lessens the importance of perceptions. But at the same time, it still remains very important that he steers the perception of the Big Ten in the right direction.
Yes.
And I think he's doing that. So I very much think it matters. It may sound trivial, us talking about it. And this is not the first time we've done it, but he's got to sort of match the SEC step there. Like the SEC are the kings of that. They've done it forever. They've had reason to. They have less reason to now, and the Big Ten has as much reason as anyone's ever had to act that way coming off of these last two seasons. So I think he does need to carry himself. He doesn't need to do it in a way that's over the top, I don't think, but he has to be a little more stern, I guess, in delivering the message of just how good this conference is.
Yeah. 25-year winter. We direct you guys toward it. It is the narrative podcast that is in the YouTube feed, the podcast feed for Kings of the North. Episode 1 came out Monday, and a lot of that, you and I are just, I think, at the moment, as attuned to the North-South Big Ten SEC perception battle as anybody in America.
We live in the world every day. We live in that world every day.
And we just spent several months researching the last 25 years of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I think that you and I are on alert for is the ball has caught up, has the perception, because we believe the perception affects the ball. And it feels like the Big Ten, you look at Michigan's national championship, you look at Ohio State's national championship, you look at Oregon as the number 1 team last year, you look at Penn State in the semifinal, they can hang. They absolutely. I think that. Do you agree with this fact? The Big Ten is the equal of the SEC on the field.
Yeah, I think I'm there. Yes.
You know what show you're on.
Well, even if I wasn't, and I think you could parse that, right? I think the top of the Big Ten and the top of the SEC are even. Like that to me is indisputable. You want to get into more conversations about the depth, which we will, I think, this week talk more about that. There's a little more wiggle room there. I guess there's certainly more conversation to be had. But I think it's more or less equal. Yeah. But I also think this, like the ball impacts the perception and I think vice versa. But there's so much to chisel away at there that the ball is not enough at the moment.
Yeah.
So like the rhetoric still matters. And I think will continue to matter for a couple of years. So that's why it's important that we think that Tony Petitti comes out and says the right things, which I think he did today for the most part.
Yeah, we do think that they are. Yeah, this is producer action. Mike could tell that I was saying in my head, "Where are our Warhammers?" We didn't bring the swords.
He's got a little top weight to him. He can do some damage with this.
I did think I got the notice. I got the TSA notice in the bag that we looked in your bag. We looked at your foam Warhammers, and they let them in. So we forgot to let the players swing the Warhammers, but we'll get them out. We'll get Derek Moore swinging a Warhammer at some point while we're out here.
I like the way this feels in my hand.
I'm going to be honest. I think the way that I swing a Warhammer kind of looks like that I'm waving a baton. Yeah. And I probably should stop doing it. I don't think I have the wrist strength to swing a Warhammer.
Wrist dexterity is important. It's not. It feels like it's not all that different. I think from swinging a baseball bat. Got to be loose, yet firm.
Can I just tell you that in my days as a baseball player, I was a good field no hit first baseman.
Oh, I was a hit for power and a slick fielding first baseman.
Really?
Oh,
See,
yeah. I could pick it.
The problem is that no hit, good field first baseman don't exist because nobody wants those. Here's the thing that we are talking about, why the perception matters, right? The college football playoff last year, despite the controversy, was actually pretty clean.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana was 11-1. SMU finished 11-2, but they were an 11-1 team that lost the conference championship game, and they don't count that conference championship loss as a full loss. They don't want to penalize those teams in those games. And the SEC contenders against those teams were 3-loss teams. So in the end, they took the 1-loss team and the 1.5 loss team over the 3-loss teams. And the SEC is still mad about that. We want to talk about the depth of the Big Ten. The idea that the SEC and the Big Ten could, for instance, have 6, 7, 8, 9, and 3 teams combined this season, I think would help Tony Petitti's point, because one of the points that he made on Tuesday, and he's made it before, is how do you separate a bunch of 9 and 3 teams? Mm-hmm. Well, you separate them by having them play each other and earn it in play-in games. But the other thing is, I still would believe that the SEC in that battle of a bunch of 9 and 3 teams would get the edge. Even if I also believe that the depth 4 through 10 in the Big Ten this year will be equal to the depth in the SEC.
I think you're right. I agree with you. I do think the SEC would get the benefit of the doubt in that situation. That goes back to what I just said. There's too much perception, I think, to still kind of hammer away at, as we have our hammers in front of us. For people to come around sort of as quickly to the idea that the Big Ten could be as deep as you and I have. So that is a rather strong argument in Tony Petitti's favor when it comes to this playoff model. I think the CFP committee got pretty lucky with how clean it was last year. And if it were like 10-2 SEC teams, it would have been different. And maybe even that in itself would have been clean. But if you're sitting there with a bunch of 9 and 3 teams, which I kind of feel like might happen this year too, I mean, that's what their job is. That's what they're there for. But you're going to be in a situation where people are going to be really sort of parsing their subjectivity and kind of picking apart that process in a way that maybe isn't great for the current state of the playoffs. So I guess my anticipation is it could be a little ugly this year, which is like fine, I guess. You sort of have to figure out what this process is. It being so clean last year, like I don't think actually did anybody any favors.
Yeah,
as they try to figure out what the future of this thing should be. So I almost welcome a messier situation where there's a bunch of 9 and 3 teams and they need to figure out what it looks like.
And then the thing that I wonder is the point that Tony Petitti is making now about automatic qualifiers, and he reiterated that he wants the automatic qualifiers. And let me read a little bit from what he said on Tuesday. The point I'll make is that every time you think about expansion, I think there's some sort of counter idea that it gets easier to make these decisions, talking about the playoff committee. It actually gets harder. More teams look alike. More teams are going to have 9 and 3 records and struggle in a conference road game. More teams might stumble in a conference home game. Some teams play tougher non-conference schedules. It's also just the evolution of how you go through the season and how you move across. I just think that those decisions are really difficult to make. And then how do you make them? How do you differentiate 6, 7, 8, 9, and 3 teams? You have them play play-in games.
Yeah.
And so I think it's possible as the Big Ten and the SEC continue. Again, Tony Petitti, again, doubled down on the point. The Big Ten and the SEC control this. They've been granted the authority to decide on the future of the playoff. And I think it was Brett Bielema who was like, you know what I would have liked to see last year? Like he was back in playing games. I would love to see Ole Miss play Alabama.
Yeah.
Because the one thing, like as the SEC complains about their 3, 9, and 3 teams not getting in, which one? Which 2?
Yeah.
You're not getting in. South Carolina, Alabama, and Ole Miss weren't all getting in.
Right.
So then now you're parsing that based on what? So I wonder, Bill, because it feels like the SEC was sort of in favor of 9 and 3 at one point, and now they're not. Now they want the 5 plus 11. But if this is really messy, and if they push this off, if they push this decision off, a very messy, and what I'm envisioning is there's 7 teams in the Big Ten and the SEC that are 9 and 3, and 2 get in, or 3 get in. All 7 aren't getting in, but not that 0 get in like last year.
Right.
Could that messiness give Tony Petitti more ammunition, where it's like it's impossible to decide?
So, yeah.
So how do you decide it? on the field in conference play-in games.
I think it would give him a ton of. I mean, I think it would almost like kind of seal the deal for his playoff model if that were to happen. And I will say, like, as someone, I think I've been more leaning toward the 5+11 thing. If and when it goes to 16, I think Tony Petitti might have swayed me.
Tony had a great day,
or at least like pushed me. He did have a good day, I think, or at least pushed me back sort of towards the middle. Because I think the thing I actually have in favor of more than anything is lessening the subjectivity of the selection process. But I suppose I just hadn't heard really Tony Petitti express why he thought the 4-4-2-2-1, whatever it is, model was the right one, and I think he actually explained that pretty well today. You're not taking subjectivity out of it entirely. But the idea of like expanding the playoff field to 16 while reducing the subjectivity to the point where you only have 3 at-large bids that you still have to figure out the old-fashioned way, and really most years it's probably 2 because Notre Dame, I think, more often than not will take up one of those spots. I don't mind that. And
then that at-large spot or 2 allows you to come and sweep up any mistakes, anything where it's like, well, we had a number 3 team in a conference that their starting quarterback got hit in the eye by a bird in the first quarter, and he'll be back for the playoff, but he was out for the rest of that game, and so they lost to the 6. So we're not going to be like, well, sorry, you finished, like you went 11-1. Again, I have an 11-1. I have 3 teams in the Big Ten at 11-1 in my prediction. So that third place Big Ten team at 11-1 loses to the 6. And we're not saying that's it, automatic qualifiers, you're out. You have those at-large spots where that team would then be one of the at-large teams, right?
Good. Yeah.
And we're talking about the Big Ten because we're at Big Ten Media Days. We're not being dismissive.
Not only, sorry to cut you off, like not only I think in that situation would that team still be in the field as one of the 2 or 3 at-larges, they would still be probably seeded accordingly, right? To whatever their overall record is. Like
yes.
You might get knocked down a seed for losing that initial play-in game, but it's not like you're going to be a team who went into the play-in with 11 wins as a potential 3 seed, and now all of a sudden you're a 15 seed. Like, I don't think that's going to happen to you.
And again, we're not being dismissive of our Big 12 fans and our Big 12 teams, and we understand that there are a lot of people there who do not like the automatic qualifier things. But even like as we're just like constantly having conversations about this stuff, what if you got to a conference championship weekend where in the SEC and the Big 10, the 1 and the 2 did not play? Like, you did away with the conference championship game. And the SEC and the Big, because those 2 teams are both in. The SEC and the Big 10 are playing 3-6 and 4-5. In the Big 12 and the ACC, the 1 is in, and they're playing a 2-3 for the second automatic bid in those conferences. And then you're taking the at-large from like the teams that don't quite make it there. Like, I think that becomes a very exciting conference championship weekend. It opens opportunity.
It's not really a conference championship weekend,
but a conference. It's a play-in weekend. And then if you don't make the 1 in the Big 12 and the ACC play, and you don't make the 1 or 2 in the Big 10 or the SEC play, you know what you're bringing back in that the 16-team playoff will be getting rid of? Buys.
Oh.
You're bringing like a bye weekend back in. That one of the punishments of being 3, well, you have to beat the 6, but you still might get an at-large, but you're playing an extra game. And if you're one of the 2, you don't.
Okay.
And so, you're creating, again, who loves subjectivity? And I do wonder if in the end, the people in the SEC who don't like the automatic qualifier thing, can we have something that talks us? If Bill Landis can be swayed, can't others be swayed?
I'd like to think so. I'm not a terribly stubborn person, though, so I'm a little easier to sway.
It's not a Warhammer fight kind of situation here. Okay.
Right.
We're going to bring a bunch of ball talk on Wednesday with the 6 teams that talked on Tuesday. Stick with us all week. But right now we're going to go to Nicole Auerbach, and then we'll be out of here for this reaction show here on Tuesday night from Las Vegas. Joined now by Nicole Auerbach of NBC Sports. Thank you for being on KOTN. Your first appearance.
Yes, and the branding is strong. Love the logos, love the mic flags. Yeah, you guys are top notch.
You voted in our poll. Thank you for voting in our poll.
Yep.
Who did you vote for? Penn State or Ohio State?
I voted for Penn State.
Okay. What do you think of the Nittany Lions?
So the assumption is that they will win a big game at some point, or maybe 2.
They have 2 big ones.
So I don't know. It just felt like they're the right pick in the preseason. And then we'll see if they can do it. But I it's one of those things that's always really hard because it's the same thing with Ryan Day, the Michigan thing, right? Like you can't do it until you've done it. So you just don't know. But like on paper, they should be able to beat Ohio State or Oregon or both. We'll see if they can, but I don't know. I mean, I feel really good about Texas, Penn State, and Clemson going into the season. So my picks and poll things have reflected that. But there is the execution piece that I'm not sure about.
Are the Big Ten and the SEC friends?
I think they're friendly. I don't think they're like frenemies. And they're definitely not enemies. It's not like a Cold War like it was when it was Kevin Warren and Greg Sankey, and they were like actively not speaking or taking jabs at each other. But I do think the college football playoff expansion debate has shown some cracks there. And it's funny when everyone's always worried about like, oh, the Big Ten and the SEC like controlling college sports or like taking over and forcing their way. They can't even agree on this. They don't have the same preference for a college football playoff model, and people think they're going to break away or make all these like major decisions, right? But I do think that it's overall healthy to have checks and balances in college sports. So I think it's okay that the Big Ten and SEC can work together on like the revenue sharing stuff just fine, but disagree on the playoff.
Do you? I'm glad this is messy, because if it was like, I don't know if it would be true, but if they were agreeing on everything, my inclination would be like, oh, this is what the SEC wants, and the Big Ten's just like, okay, we'll go along with that. So like, if there is disagreement, then to me it's like, okay, well then that means the Big Ten is standing up for itself in some way, right?
And I think that's true. I think that's been true of the Tony Petitti era. I think we don't hear from him a lot publicly, but he is an idea guy and an execution guy, and he is making points known in meetings. And I think that the Big Ten is, throwing its weight around. I mean, the way that he's talking about this, like, do we have a name for the AQ model that he supports for the playoff? Like 4-4-2-2, I don't know, something.
Yeah, no,
we need a
the
name
Petiti model. The Petiti model. TP model.
The TP model. That is, first of all, I think it was good to hear him explain it and like hit the reasons he supports it and do all those things. But even the reason that like it's gotten as far as it is, and that like, the Big Ten folks were upset that the SEC folks kind of backed off their support from it, the administrator side, that's because he is pushing, right? Like he's pushing those things, behind closed doors. And so I think it overall is healthy to have the push and pull of all of this.
Yeah. Do you think perception, how conferences are viewed, matters? Does it matter more than to just people holding microphones and talking about the sport?
It matters to fans. So I do think it matters. And I think it colors so much of the sport is subjective, the way we talk about it. Listen, it's humans on a selection committee because they wanted subjectivity. And they can tell us that they're going to take their hat off and they're all thinking for what's best for college football, but they're humans. So yes, all of it matters. And I think one thing that has happened since the first year of the 14 playoff is that people care much more about conferences relative to other conferences. Like I remember Jim Delaney saying something to me 5 or 6 years in when, we were starting to talk about like, oh, the Pac-12 hasn't been in the playoff in X amount of years or, whatever, right? That people didn't do that in the BCS era when there were only 2 leagues represented each year, right? But then it got to 4 and there were 5 power conferences. It became a natural thing. So, and then you only have so few high profile early games and then the bowl game records. Like you had a couple of things, but it became so much more of a thing people tracked and people were checking. And I think in the process, now we're going to be wondering, how many teams are you getting into the playoff? Those things, like it's all about who's positioned better and who's weaker and stronger. And I was at SEC Media Days. This idea that like, well, I don't see anyone who's playing a 9-game conference schedule wanting to play our 8. Like they wouldn't trade my schedule for their schedule, So like it infiltrates everything.
I like that part because you were getting mad with your head when you were doing that part. Like the SEC says this, and like you can ask Landis. That's what I do on every show. I get so mad about things.
I hate that argument, and I'm like, play 9 conference games. Like challenge yourself. Like you added big brands, Oklahoma and Texas, to your conference.
Yeah.
And then you didn't add how much more they were all going to play each other.
So I asked Tony Petitti about this. He didn't really, I tried to ask like a 2-part question, which is like, you can't ask a 2-part question because I only ever answer one part.
You know that too. That's like lesson number 1 in journalism.
I should have talked to you before I asked it. But I said, I did ask the second part about, it feels like he obviously is very big on playing the same number of conference games. And the discussion is the SEC getting to 9. And I said, would you go to 8?
Yeah.
So I had proposed, not I had proposed it, but like the idea to me of if you go to 8 and then that includes a challenge, like it's the SEC Big Ten thing that has been discussed. But so it's 8 plus that, everybody's doing that. And then you have 3 others to play 2 easy games or a local rivalry or another national non-conference game or whatever. He didn't answer the part about would the Big Ten ever go to 8.
I don't think they would go back.
Is it like why? Just because we're not going to have 18 teams in a conference and only play 8 games?
Yeah, because then it's harder. Like the whole point, and this is what bothers me about the 8 in the leagues that are now really big as well, is again, like there's supposed to be a point of being in a conference, like that you are affiliated with your other schools and you do things together. And so you should be playing them as frequently as you possibly can. I think here's my ultimate solution. If neither side budges on this and we still have 8 and 9, there should just make a minimum for the CFP. Just say you have to play 10 power conference opponents.
But I do think, and Petiti made this point, there is the math of when you're playing 9 in your conference, you're adding 9 extra losses. And that really matters when you're getting to the 4th and 5th and 6th best team.
And I think that is a part of the reason, for the SEC, they're saying the 8-game conference schedule is really challenging. They don't need to do it. And like half that league has those in-state rivalries that already add, a challenging game. I get those arguments, but I also think it's that. I mean, think about now how many teams that are really like proud football programs are now in a league that has Oklahoma and Texas too. It's even more crowded in the middle. You're trying to get to the top. It's super hard. And half of them would take an extra loss. That's a real thing that if you're going to do that, that's going to affect coaches' careers.
And I do think the other thing, and I don't know that Tony Petitti is stating this specifically, but I don't think he believes they would win the perception battle. That if you do get in to a committee room and they are doing it, and because the thing that got confusing last year is that it was an 11-1 Big Ten team against 9-3 SEC teams, and the SEC is still complaining about that. It's a 2-game spread.
The only reason they were as close as they were was because they were getting credit for the SEC schedule,
right? If Bama had been 10-2, they would have gotten it ahead of Indiana.
This was. That part of the argument always bothered me too, because they would say they weren't getting credit. I'm like, no, but the fact that you were a 3-loss team with losses like that and they're this close is because you're getting credit for the SEC schedule and the SEC grind of going and playing those games and losing them. So I agree. This perception does matter. It does matter. And it's a sport that doesn't have enough crossover points. So you don't have like real strength of schedule metrics. So like that's all you can really play off of. Right. But my thing on that last year is if you lose a quarter of your games, then you have been inconsistent enough that you can't really complain if you don't get put in. Like to me, with these conferences, and I would say the same thing for the Big Ten, if you're talking like the 4th or 5th team in the league, you don't have like some God-given right to play for a national championship because you were 4th or 5th in your own conference. And I get that like maybe your high end is high, but like there's a consistency element that needs to be there. And so again, I get this is all subjective, but I think when people are complaining about the selection committee on all the sides, they all have different points, right? About like how
different complaints,
their league isn't being viewed for whatever reason. We don't have that same conversation with basketball because the selection committee's actually made points about scheduling in basketball. Like they've kept teams out. They have affected seeding and they've straight up like told the coaches, this is why. And the football selection committee hasn't done that. They have not like made a point, like a line in the sand on scheduling, because Michigan had no problems when they had a weak non-conference. Indiana, they haven't even used the in-season rankings to make those points.
Right.
So it does lead to everyone complaining for all different reasons.
Nicole, I don't know if you're aware of the narrative college football podcast that is sweeping the nation. Bill's over here. It might be the most popular narrative podcast in the nation right now. It's called the 25-Year Winter. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it.
You did hear of it.
I follow both of you on social media, so I have heard of it.
Did you listen to it?
Not yet. It's only been out for like 2 days.
I don't want to tell people what you're doing, but you have a flight coming up possibly.
I do.
Right? You can download it before you get on the plane.
Okay, how many episodes are out?
Only 1 episode out. Second episode is out on Friday.
Okay, my flight is going to be 16 hours. I'm going to swimming world championships. Nobody cares. But I can definitely, I could listen to, you have 16 episodes? Like I've got a lot of time here.
We'll give you some bonus content before you go. Our point there is that between 1998 and 2022, the only won 2 national titles. The South won 22. And it had not been like that in the previous 25 years. But we also, the secondary component of that, which we get to in episode 5, is we think the worm has turned. When you look at Michigan, when you look at Ohio State, when you look at where Penn State and Notre Dame and Oregon and Ohio State and schools like that are positioned
Does
this
Oregon
year.
count as the North? Okay.
It's explained in episode 1. There's stuff about latitudes.
Okay.
And
this
snowfall.
is the most geographic college football podcast that exists. Yes, I know.
The N
But the
stands
North
for
yes.
North.
No. I get it. It just means more in the North.
Is it over? Is the era of Southern and SEC dominance over? And our contention always is, it's not we're saying the North is better, but we're saying like it's back to equal.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that premise?
I think that there has definitely been a recalibration of things. And there's lots of reasons, and I'm sure you get into it in your show, which I've not listened to yet because I did not get advanced screenings. But the idea that, like, people have been talking about this, about like, okay, what about like the billionaire boosters who are getting involved for Michigan or for these other places versus like the under the table cheating and, handshakes with the $100 bills or whatever. So I do think the way that money flows and investment, when there is either more structure around it or more things allowed above board, is of course going to have a difference on things, and a different impact on this. And it's funny too, because for the first couple of years of the NIL era, like places like Michigan, and like they weren't really all in the same way that a lot of the SEC schools were. Even Ohio State was obviously much more involved and into it. But it feels like those schools have stepped up. Like I visited Penn State in the spring, in April, and like they were still buzzing about the fact that they could pay Jim Knowles what they paid him, right? Like they were talking about the buzzwords, alignment, all of that stuff from like the president, athletic director, all those things, but just that they were willing to do that and see the value in paying a coordinator that kind of money because you think that it's going to help you take that next step and like compete for a national championship is new to them. Coaches have complained and said all of this stuff, but like for those schools to kind of actually pony up the kind of money that you need to be at the highest level, plus then all the fundraising and elements around it. I think that's shifted some things for sure.
The under the table stuff, that's episode 4.
Okay.
So you'll probably be coming back from your trip when we get to that one. She's Nicole Auerbach. You can find her talking about college football on NBC Sports. Where else can the folks find you? You're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I'm also on Sirius XM. So that's one. But yeah, TV, we have digital stuff. Joshua Perry and I have a podcast, Rushing the Field. So you can find that everywhere. And then I do occasionally still write for NBCSports.com.
What?
So yeah.
Wow. I haven't written in like 3 years. Okay.
Yeah, but now you figured out how to iron this. What is it called? Like just signage?
It's a vinyl banner. I said I'd never in journalism school. No one ever taught me how to iron a banner, but I was doing
now
it at
that's
6:30 in the morning.
For the multimedia journalists these days.
I don't know how to write a nut graph, but I got an A in banner ironing.
It looks great. Looks great.
Thank you. She's Nicole Auerbach. She voted in our KOTN poll, and she knows a lot about college football. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.